Before we start, drop a comment with where you are watching from and what time it is in your city right now. Keep that exact time in your head, because in 1909, if your name crossed a telegram line after midnight in Manhattan, someone in this building would already be reading it, pricing it, and deciding who profits from your private life. Western Union's Broad Street night room looks harmless on purpose. Brass sounders tick, fans push hot air from corner to corner, and a wall clock coughs past 12:47 a.m. Oak racks hold message blanks, paste pots, and onion skin that lifts a perfect ghost of every word you write if you press hard enough. The operators wear sleeves gartered at the elbow. A clerk named Nell Hart, 24, keeps a pencil behind her ear and ink under her nails. She can copy at 22 words a minute while arguing with a messenger who swears he already hit the Waldorf. She is fast, forgettable, and that makes her valuable. In this room, invisible hands pull bigger levers than the law ever sees. The rules everyone pretends are company policy: operate, copy, stamp, dispatch. The rules that actually pay rent: never touch minors, never alter an original, never take a buyer's money in the open, and never keep a second ledger you cannot burn in 3 seconds. Break those rules and a foreman will arrive at your boarding house with a real policeman. Keep them and you can afford a room with a window and send $5 home on Fridays. At 12:52 a.m., Buffalo taps a domestic lie. Husband delayed by board meeting. Stop, do not wait up, stop. Addressed to a Gramercy Park townhouse where the wife phoned earlier to demand night messages be rushed. Nell copies the text, stamps it, and slides it to dispatch. Then she does the movement that pays. Onion skin ghost to blotter. Pink carbon underneath. Heel of the hand. Lift. The duplicate is flawless. 3 seconds flat. She does not steal. She simply refuses to let words vanish without charging the right people for seeing them twice. The envelope ground is simple. A plain sleeve marked with a red pencil X waits under the radiator behind her desk. At 1:10 a.m., a bellboy will scratch his ankle, retrieve the sleeve, and leave by the stair landing. He never sees inside. On the landing, a hat brim waits. The man under it is called the stationer. Buyers call him other things: the insurance policy, the pastor, the janitor of rich people's messes. He never enters the wire room and never speaks to Nell. He comes and goes like a draft, carrying marriages that have 5 days left. Tonight is not routine. There is a new pile of pink carbons cut too neatly to be company issue. No one logged them. They simply appeared after the foreman exchanged a nod with the kind of woman who never pays for stamps. And a messenger boy, Fitch, 17, trying to be brave, has a brass key he should not have and sweat lines in his palms that say, "The Waldorf called again." On Nell's rack sits a slip she did not request, a private hotel switchboard alert that additional bell staff will be on the second floor per guest request and routine deliveries should be held after 3 a.m. Translated, keep the hallway empty for witnesses. At 12:59 a.m., a code Nell has seen before comes in from a Madison Avenue club. It is the lazy lawyer's cipher, letters rotated just enough to feel clever. She reads it twice, then hears what it actually says. A parcel will arrive for the gentleman at a time that photographs well for judges. It names a woman who works at a dressmaker on Lexington, a door number, and a bellboy who will be paid $2 to make a scene look official. The number matters. The number is the trap. The number is 214. The stationer's runner appears at the doorway with a prayer book under his arm, like always. He stays 1 foot outside the threshold, because even thieves keep lines they do not cross. Nell does not look up. He tips 2 fingers in a priestly half-salute and disappears. A minute later, the Nassau Street Divorce Office sends its runner with clean shoes and a cleaner conscience. He signs for last week's 6 pinks, lowers his voice, and asks if any duplicates match today's rumors. Nell says she has nothing that will hold up in front of a judge. That sentence is true and useless at the same time. At 1:20 a.m., the Boston line coughs up a predictable dinner confirmation for a private club. Boring, safe, unprofitable. Then Asbury Park spits panic. Caught on the veranda stop room. Key found Stop Burn the Hat Stop. Panic is worth more than diamonds. Panic tells you where to place cameras and where to stand when the door opens. The stationer's men eat panic for breakfast and sell the leftovers to newspapers. A newspaperman who uses a sermon for a masthead once sent Nell a note. Photograph the ledger. She burned that note. The air changes when the tall man arrives. Hat in hand, summer coat, a card from a bureau assisting courts. He smiles the way men do when they expect applause. He asks whether anyone has noticed unauthorized carbons. He asks about supplementary records. He does not say the word bribe. He does not have to. He says they will wait outside with proper papers until dawn. He is not a buyer. He is the kind of broom that makes a floor dusty on purpose so his boss can bill more hours. Nell flips open her address book, the one with a split cardboard lining where the 2 hot copies sleep. Between her fingers is the staged signal that will put boots outside a hotel door and a camera inside it. She considers the 4 roads she can walk: sell it, burn it, hand it to the broom, or make it move so fast no one can pin it to her name. She chooses the road that keeps her alive until morning. She tucks the duplicate deeper and waits. At 1:43 a.m., the proper papers men return and post on the threshold like coat hooks. The foreman puts on his jacket and his sad dignity. Fitch sweeps the baseboards too often. The radiator is bare. Nell's heel taps the floor once, then stops. Timing is everything. If the buyers get the ghost before the brooms do, they own the morning. If the brooms get it first, they own her. Now the room shows its real face. The Waldorf switchboard calls down to request that Western Union hand deliver and read aloud a telegram to a private suite. That is not a request. That is the first line in a staged affidavit. We heard, we smelled, we saw. A junior clerk jogs the stairs with the envelope. He comes back with a hat pin in his sleeve and a shake in his hand. The stationer slips down the stairwell and then vanishes. He can smell a bad angle the way a butcher understands spoiled meat. By 2:04 a.m., Nell has the ciphered Waldorf signal copied twice, the official on the rack and the twin warm against her skin under the blouse. She tells the foreman she needs the ladies' room, washes ink until the water runs clear, then takes the back exit the messenger boys use when rich people want poor people invisible. Broad Street is the color of a burnt match. She cuts west to Broadway, north to 34th, left into the Waldorf service door. 2 bellboys smoke near the steps. One is the boy with the lined palms. He opens the door without asking a question that could make him unemployed. 2nd floor. Lights at half strength. 2 tidy maid 5 doors down with a bundle of sheets too small for her act. 2 plain suits posed as guests with nowhere to sit except a bench placed exactly where you would place 2 cooperative witnesses. Room numbers in brass. 214 shines like a reward. The door is not fully closed. A warm slice of light marks the carpet. Inside, a man in suspenders is rehearsing his apology voice. On a chair sits a men's dress shirt, open. On the floor, a brown bottle has tipped beside two torn theater stubs dated last week. On the bed, one sheet hangs the wrong way, evidence you can sketch in court later without saying anything impolite out loud. Nell takes the bend in the hall that gives her a clean view of the threshold without making her a name someone can swear to. She slides the duplicate telegram from its hiding place and folds it so only the line with the room and the hour is visible. The maid with the pretend bundle counts something silently. The suits on the bench look bored in the way trained men look bored when they are about to stand up and ruin someone's life. Downstairs a bell rings once. Nobody moves. 2 slow knocks. Pause. 3 quick. The door chain scrapes back. The maid lifts her chin. The camera arrives as they always do here, out of someone's coat in a mahogany box with a brass eye, and a man behind it whose face turns to metal the second he bends to the glass. The shutter is quiet. It does not need volume. It needs to exist long enough for a judge to believe 2 strangers saw. You want dirt? This is how clean men sell it. A paid witness sniffs the air because odor is testimony. A maid places a folded towel on the wrong table so she can later swear she came to correct a housekeeping mistake and found a moral one. A pen scratches a stage time into a notebook. The camera catches a profile that can be matched to a signature. Nothing obscene, nothing illegal in the frame. Just enough composition to feel like truth. Nell is not a hero. She is a clerk who does not want to be owned by either side, so she does 3 things in 10 seconds. Step 1, she memorizes the faces at 2:14. Step 2, she shows the cameraman her badge lanyard on purpose. Let him record that Western Union was there, and therefore any timing tied to the telegram is now muddy. Step 3, she knocks sharply on the door across the hall and announces Western Union, immediate delivery, loud enough to break the theater. A bathrobe opens at the far end and yells about sleep. A bellboy calls a room number to another boy. The corridor returns to being public property. The first witness mutters they have what they need anyway. The shutter clicks once more. The chain slides back into place. The show ends, but the stain stays. On the stairs, the boy with the lined palms finds Nell with his eyes and makes 2 tiny motions. Left for the manager's office, right for the service exit. Left means a name in ink. Right means air and choices. Nell presses the duplicate telegram against her ribs and moves. At 2:12 a.m., the Waldorf's hallway smelled like lamp oil and nerves, and Nell chose the service exit because fresh air could not testify. The duplicate telegram burned against her ribs like a coin heated on a stove. Outside, the city dragged a sleeve across its face. A streetcar hissed, a milk wagon rattled, and somewhere a newsboy coughed in his sleep. She cut south hard, took Broadway fast, then the back door to Broad Street where the messenger bikes bled grease on the tiles. The doorman looked at her blouse as if he could hear paper ticking under it and decided he did not want to be able to hear anything at all. Upstairs, the bureau men had rooted themselves on the threshold like hat stands with badges. They wore the half-smile of people who get paid by the hour to wait for other people to make mistakes. The foreman had put on his jacket and his funeral voice. Fitch was sweeping the same clean part of floor for the 5th time because movement felt like safety when you were 17. Nell slid to her station without touching the tall men's eyes and set both palms flat on the blotter until she could trust her fingers. The brass sounders ticked bad arithmetic and good gossip into the room. She fed harmless carbons to the burn box, the wire lid open like a mouth. The staged signal stayed under her blouse, warm, patient, lethal to anyone who claimed it in the wrong minute. The tall man cleared his throat and unfolded his proper authority like a theater program. "We will require all non-essential carbons for safeguarding," he said. His partner said nothing and counted the boxes like a church usher counting envelopes. "Everything here is essential until it is ash," Nell said, dry, clerk flat. She opened her address book to the safe half and handed the tall man 3 ghosts from last week: train delays, a dinner no one enjoyed, a clerk who forgot a middle initial. He nodded as if he had won a point he did not understand. The Nassau Street runner arrived next with his perfect shoes and that soft knock that pretended he hated to bother the working class. He saw the tall men, measured the angle, and unrolled his best courthouse voice. "Foreman, our office will lodge a complaint if communications are impeded." The foreman, who had been waiting his whole life to say something like this, replied, "Then lodge one." The runner smiled the way a cat smiles at a canary that turned out to be a bell. He pivoted to Nell. "Any pinks tonight, I should see?" She gave him the truth that would not help him. "Not for your ledger." The stationer did not appear. That absence was a professional choice. When heat rises, smart men stay out of kitchens and wait in alleys. The boy with the prayer book would come later, or not at all. At 2:27, a hotel notice to the foreman called for discretion on second-floor corridors and holding routine deliveries beyond 3 a.m. The foreman read it and grunted because it meant extra steps for his boys. Nell read it and saw a stage manager whispering cues. The sounders spat 2 long commercial messages that washed the room in numbers and gave everyone permission to breathe. While they breathed, Nell made a decision. Selling the ghost would crown the stationer king of the morning. Handing it to the tall men would crown her the office rat. Burning it would turn 2 paying doors into locked ones. A 4th option existed. Let the ghost move through the room without her name clinging to it. She wrote a clerk's note on a clean blank. Duplicate of routine hotel call, misfiled with housekeeping slips. Returning to foreman's box for correction. She folded the staged signal inside, sealed the envelope, walked it to the foreman's desk, and slid it under a weight of receipts fat enough to look old. "Correction for your box?" she said. He looked grateful that something tonight could be corrected. The tall man's partner began his harvest. He lifted stacks like a careful thief, scanning for anything that glowed with guilt. Fitch fetched ink pads he did not need. The radiator hummed. The burn box ate paper. Inside Nell's chest, a clock she had wound herself counted out the seconds until someone touched the wrong sheet. The tall man leaned in. Up this close, Nell could see the seam where his lapel button had been resewn, see the tired ring of skin under his eye where salt lives after too many late nights. "Miss," he said in a voice pitched for juries, "we will also inspect any supplementary ledgers." His eyes cut to her address book. "Including that." "This is Milliners and Messengers," she said, and laid it open across her blotter with the split cardboard face down. He saw hotel numbers in a clerk's hand and names that meant nothing unless you knew how they tipped. He wanted the thrill of catching her and got oatmeal. He settled for procedure. "Carbons from midnight forward," he said. "Now." At 3:12, a Boston Rail Company's complaint landed like a doorstop. At 3:15, the Waldorf confirmed a read-aloud delivery had been completed at a private suite, precise time stamp included, which would be very useful to whichever side needed to argue that everything had been very official indeed. The tall man's partner wrote the minute down with the concentration of a boy cracking a safe in a comic strip. Nell fed more gray strips to the burn box and reminded her hands not to shake. The envelope she had hidden under receipts sat 20 inches away, invisible to anyone who had not watched her place it. 3:37, and the stationer's runner finally appeared, prayer book under his arm, eyes quick and empty like all good messengers. He paused at the door when he saw the tall men, because smart boys never step on wet paint. "I have a receipt for the foreman," he said, neutral as a teaspoon. The foreman waved him to the slot at the edge of his desk. The runner slid his folded paper into the slot and, in the same silky motion, lifted the top receipt and took the sheet beneath it, the company envelope, with Nell's notepaper clipped to respectability. He steadied his hat with one finger and left without looking left or right. The door latch kissed wood and then forgot it ever met. The tall man blinked, body catching up a second late. He strode to the hall and caught only the smell of cheap soap and rain on wool. He came back in with no smile left. "What just left this room?" he asked, the politeness scraped off. "A receipt," the foreman said, and for once the whole truth fit in 2 words. The partner wrote faster, graphite sawing the page. He made a list of job titles because names would have forced him to file real papers later. He asked whether Western Union permitted strangers to rifle a foreman's box. The foreman said New York permitted whatever men were too tired to stop. Nell sat very still and looked like a woman who had always sat very still. She thought about the envelope already threading the city's night economy, across a stairwell, down a service corridor, into a pocket that would take it 2 blocks and a world away. She thought about the camera plate cooling in someone's bag. She thought about 214 stamped in brass and the way a chain sounds when you pull it against a door that will open anyway. At 3:52, the Boston line died a little, revived, and brought a final spatter of dull commerce. The tall men retreated to the corridor to write a report that would read as if their waiting had rerouted history. Fitch's broom squeaked. He looked at Nell like she had pulled him back from a trolley and then insisted they had just been out for a walk. She told him, without moving her lips, to go straight home at shift end and not let anyone buy him a coffee. He nodded too many times. The city began to gray. Somewhere in the building, a pipe coughed. A dairy cart clattered past, and a cat made a decision on a stoop. Nell slid the address book back under her blouse because there was nowhere safer than bone and cotton. She closed the burn box. The foreman signed something he would resent tomorrow. The tall men promised Western Union would be hearing from council and tipped their hats to the idea of cooperation the way sailors salute the horizon. Nell left the wire room without asking permission because permission could be remembered later in someone else's handwriting. The stairwell swallowed her. The loading corridor breathed warm air up from the street. She stepped outside into a dawn that pretended it had nothing to do with what the night had done. Across the street, a newspaper bundle split and spilled headlines about rail stock. The boy who would deliver the envelope for the stationer turned the corner, adjusting his prayer book like a man straightening a tie for church. He did not see her. She let him not see her. Then she looked west where the Waldorf slept like a guilty giant, and east where the courthouse clock would soon pretend to be impartial. And she understood that the only thing left to decide before noon was who got to name this mess first. She turned toward Nassau Street and the runner's immaculate shoes. Nassau Street smelled like ink and late promises. The runner's office sat above a pawn shop, the kind of place where people came to turn memory into cash. Nell climbed 2 flights, knocked once, and walked in without waiting, because waiting in front of a lawyer teaches him he owns your time. The runner looked up from a stack of affidavits and smiled the way a doorman smiles when he recognizes a regular tipper. "You came to save me a trip," he said. "I came to sell you a mistake before it belongs to someone else," Nell said, closing the door behind her. She kept the address book under her blouse, the duplicate folded inside like a heated blade. He glanced past her to the hallway. "We prefer morning appointments." "You prefer a head start," she said, and placed on his desk a company envelope with nothing in it. He waited anyway, habit making a fool of him, then set it down and gestured at a chair. "Your employer won't enjoy this," he said. "My employer enjoys clocks and bills," Nell said. "Same as you." He steepled his fingers. "Which mistake am I buying?" "Room 214, Waldorf," she said. "Time-stamped, staged. You get the telegram ghost and a description of the door the camera faced if you give me one thing." "A number?" "A fence," she said. "When the broom men come with paper, I want your office to say, 'I cooperated in an ongoing inquiry under counsel.' That sentence will keep me out of the boarding house hallway at midnight." He pretended to consider that as if there were a risk he cared about other than billable hours. "And you are certain your ghost matches our rumor?" "I was in the hall," Nell said. "I know the smell they will swear to and the angle they will draw on the courtroom chalkboard." He watched her face for the flinch that goes with lies. She gave him a clerk stare, calm, bored, already thinking about the next stack. He opened his drawer, slid out a blank letterhead, and wrote, "Slow and neat. To whom it may concern, our office is in lawful receipt of materials supplied by a Western Union night clerk, retained under counsel pending court order." He did not sign it. He left the lower right corner blank, a space that said he still had choices. "Show me the ghost," he said. She did not. She set the address book on the table, opened it to the outer pages, and rested one hand across the split cardboard where the duplicate slept. "Your signature first," she said. He smiled again, thinner. "You think I cannot find you if I want to?" "I think you can, which is why you are going to sign," she said. "I work in a building where men with proper paper are already counting carbons. You want what I have before they do, and you want to say later that you got it clean. Sign, and we both get what we need." He signed. Clean, expensive letters, no flourish. He sanded the ink and blew once, a tiny ceremony. She lifted her hand from the split cardboard, took the duplicate out, and placed it on top of his letter. He read it in one pass, and a piece of his mask moved. Only a piece, the corner of the mouth men press when they smell fresh money. "Good?" he said. "Very good." "It gets better," she said. "Your judge is in that cipher." He looked up with the lazy offense of a man who does not like to be reminded of facts in his own office. "Which judge?" he said. "The one with the habit of confirming hotel testimony if the photographs come out and the time reads right," Nell said. "You knew that already. I am telling you your names are bleeding together. If the broom men pull the right thread, you will find yourself in a hallway answering questions you will not invoice for." He folded the ghost into a legal envelope and sealed it with his thumb. "Let us worry about our threads," he said. "Do we have more business?" "We do," Nell said. "When the stationer asks what left my room, tell him it was a baseball score. When the broom men ask, tell them I came in with counsel. And when your photographer shows you tonight's plates, check whether he burned one." "Why would he burn one?" the runner said. "Because he saw me in his frame," Nell said. And you do not want a Western Union badge living in your exhibit list. He leaned back, recalculating a geometry he thought he owned. You are expensive, he said. I am cheaper than a hearing, Nell said, and stood. You have what you paid for. Do not make me regret the price. On the stairs, she met a man coming up who wore a hat brim low and a suit that tried too hard to be invisible. He held a prayer book under his arm. He did not look at her. She did not look at him. 2 floors down, she turned once and saw him knock on the same door she had left. So the runner was already feeding both sides, as every Nassau Street man eventually does. Fine. That made the next part easier. She crossed to Park Row and climbed the steps to the newspaper with the sermon for a masthead. The front office smelled like damp rope and cheap ink. A receptionist, half asleep in a wooden chair, roused when she said the editor's name, then let her in because Nell had the look tired people trust. She looked like work that would end soon. The editor sat in shirt sleeves, collar open, frowning at a headline about grain rates like grain could sue him. I am not selling dirt, Nell said before he could perform his routine. I am selling proof that your rivals are buying dirt with church money. He lifted an eyebrow. We have no rivals, he said, lying the way editors lie to themselves at 3 a.m. Your rival is the Nassau Street office that bankrolled tonight's photographs, Nell said. And the bureau men who came with paper are paid by a court that wants to pretend it did not hire them. Would you like the timestamp that ties them to a staged telegram? He reached for a notepad the way a thirsty man reaches for a glass he thinks is his. What do you want? I want a name to die on paper, Nell said. Not a poor woman's, not a clerk's. I want the name on the bureau letterhead. You print that, and you will get to use your sermon words without lying. And I want a line, one line, buried above the fold that says, Western Union is cooperating under counsel. That line pays my rent. He thought about it, tapping the pencil with the side of his nail. We cannot print without a document. You will have a copy of the proper authority letter the broom men waved at my foreman, Nell said. And you will have a birthmark only they know, so you can quote it without showing it. What mark? Bottom margin, right side, she said. Pin-prick hole where they keep it tacked on a board. They think it makes the paper easier to find. It makes it easier to prove they brought it. He smiled without pleasure. You are not the first clerk to walk in here on a hot night. I plan to be the first one who walks back out, Nell said. Say yes, or I will give this to a paper that likes jokes more than sermons. He wrote a single word on the pad. Yes. He did not offer his hand. He called for a boy and told him to wake the man in legal. Nell gave the boy a false name, then left by the side stairs because main doors remember faces. Outside, the eastern sky looked bruised. She headed back toward Broad Street because shifts end and begin like tides, and she wanted to be seen at her desk when the day crew arrived. On the corner by William Street, a man with a summer coat and an empty smile appeared at her elbow, like a lesson you do not want to learn twice. You ran errands, the tall man from the bureau said. That is unlike a clerk. I washed ink from my hands, Nell said. That is exactly like a clerk. He walked with her, not touching, measuring. We had a disappearance from your foreman's box, he said, a thing we will eventually describe as evidence. You had a receipt, she said. You had a boy with a prayer book, he said. We watched him. We will put a name to him by noon. Put a name to his hat while you are at it, she said. It will read the same in court." He smiled thin again. "You think this city runs on sarcasm." "I think it runs in paper and steps," she said. "Tonight I did not leave any you can count." He stopped walking. "We have a writ comin'," he said. "A real one. It will carry your name. You can be very helpful, nay heroic, or you can be an obstacle." She did not stop. "You have to know my name to write it," she said, and kept moving. He let her go, because following a woman into her building in daylight is the kind of thing even paid men avoid. In the wire room, the day shift rubbed sleep out of their eyes and complained about fans that only pushed hot air around. The foreman looked older than he had at midnight. Fitch hovered near the door like a boy pretending he has somewhere else to be. Nell sat, signed the changeover sheet, and made her face into paper. The stationer's runner slid into the doorway again, late on purpose. He stayed on the threshold and lifted his prayer book half an inch. "A message for you," he said, which he had never said before. She did not go to him. He came one step closer and held up a small square of photographic paper between two fingers. On it, a hallway glowed. The chain of 214 stretched thin as a violin string. In the lower left corner, caught by accident, a woman's blouse, a hint of a badge lanyard, and a left hand holding a small address book. "You were framed," he said, almost kindly. "Only at the edge," she said. "Edge is enough if someone needs it to be," he said. "My employer recommends you not be available for service today." "Your employer should stop rehearsing in hallways," she said. He slid the photo back into the prayer book. "We are all rehearsing," he said. "Only some of us get to pick the play." He turned to go, then looked back. "You want dirt?" The Bureau's letterhead was printed at a stationery on Park Place that also makes place cards for a judges' club dinners. Same type, same spacing. You did not get that from me. "Of course not," she said. He left. The brass sounders tapped themselves awake again. The wall clock coughed up 7:01 a.m. The city yawned. Nell opened her address book, checked the split cardboard, empty now, and stared at the pencil notes she had made next to names that used to mean simple deliveries. She thought about Park Place, about a pinprick hole in a letter, about a judge who liked his dinner tables arranged just so, about a photographer who might have burned a plate and might not have. Then a messenger burst in from the front lobby with a blue slip in his hand and panic all over his face. "Foreman," he said, "Sheriff's office is here with papers. Name on it's hers." Nell looked at the door as if she could see through wood. She put her hand flat on the blotter to stop it shaking. She did not stand up yet. She measured the distance to the back stairs and the distance to the foreman's desk, and the distance to the truth that would hurt least when it landed. Then the door opened, and a uniform stepped in with a writ that knew her name too well. The sheriff's deputy read her name like a charge and held out the writ. The tall man from the bureau stood at his shoulder with his proper authority, smile back on, thinner now, as if the edges had been sanded down by the night. The day crew went quiet the way men do when they want to be anywhere but here. Fitch froze with his broom halfway to the floor. The foreman made a show of straightening papers that did not need straightening. "Miss Hart," the deputy said, "you're to come answer questions about unlawful duplication of telegraphic communications." Nell stood, slow enough to show her hands were empty, fast enough to prove she still owned her feet. "And your writ is signed by," she said. He turned it so she could see. The judge's name lined up under a seal that had been pressed hard enough to bruise the paper. The lower right corner bore a tiny pinhole. Nell did not look at the tall man. She looked at the pinhole and thought of Park Place, of menu cards set at club dinners, of a clerk with ink on his thumb pressing sheets onto a tack to dry them uniformly. She took a breath that tasted like brass dust and paste. "Foreman," she said, "company counsel will want a copy of that for our files." The foreman, startled into courage by the word counsel, nodded at Fitch, who scuttled to the mimeograph like a beetle in a bright room. The deputy did not object. Writs hold better when everyone feels formal. The tall man took half a step, as if to reclaim momentum. "We can do this pleasant," he said, "or we can do this formal." "Formal tends to leave stains," Nell said. She reached into her blouse and drew out the Nassau Street letter the runner had signed. Clean, expensive script, still smelling faintly of sanded ink. She laid it on the foreman's desk with a clerk's care. "This states I'm cooperating under counsel in an ongoing matter. Your questions will go through that door over there where the company keeps what's left of its spine." The deputy looked at the letter. Men who carry paper respect other paper. The tall man did not look. He kept his eyes on Nell like a cat on a ledge. "Under whose counsel?" he said. "The kind who remembers who prints your letterhead," she said. "Park Place, pinholes, place cards. Do you want me to say the Judges Club out loud in a room full of messengers?" He did not flinch, but the partner at his back did a little, a tightening around the mouth that said the name had been spoken somewhere it was not supposed to live. The deputy folded the writ once, as if a smaller piece of paper would be less likely to cause trouble. "We can walk across the hall," he said. They went across the hall. The company counsel's room contained 2 chairs and a table that had absorbed a generation of pen scratches. A calendar 3 months out of date sagged on a pin. Counsel arrived with his vest half-buttoned and his hair from another decade. He read the writ. He read the Nassau Street letter. He read the faces. He had lived long enough to know which document mattered most in which room. "My clerk will make you comfortable," he told the deputy. To the tall man, "We will be answering, but we will be answering with our hands on the rail." To Nell, "Sit, Miss Hart, and tell me what you did not do." She told him the truth that would not hang her. She told him she had observed irregularities in the night room and had notified outside counsel to avoid the appearance of impropriety. She told him she had nothing in her possession that belonged to Western Union that Western Union had not already filed, burned, or mislaid. She did not say the word duplicate. She did not say 214. She said a hotel number in another context and watched the tall man try to catch it in a net. The deputy asked the questions he was required to ask: names, times, whether Carbons had left the room without authorization, whether she had communicated with parties known as the stationer, the runner, or any private bureau. Counsel objected to the first and last questions on principle and let the middle ones ride so the deputy could feel like a man whose boots had not come here for nothing. Nell said she burned what she was supposed to burn, kept what she was supposed to keep, and reported what she was supposed to report. The clock on the wall lost 3 minutes while they talked. The tall man's partner wrote everything down like a man carving a name into wet cement. At 8:12, a messenger from the front lobby brought in a folded newspaper that still smelled like the press. The deputy took it because men who wait like to turn pages. The headline was about grain again, but above the fold, buried as requested, ran a single line that said a private bureau assisting the courts was under review after irregular authorization letters surfaced, Western Union cooperating under counsel. The tall man saw it and did not move a muscle. The partner swallowed like a man who had been promised coffee and handed water. Counsel folded the paper back over the line and set it aside with 2 fingers. "Miss Hart will return to work," he said. "You may leave your card. If the court wishes a formal statement, it will be scheduled." The deputy looked relieved to be given an exit with dignity. He left a card and his half-crease writ. The tall man did not leave. He waited until the deputy's footsteps had faded, then leaned in enough that counsel could call it rude, and not enough to make it a fight. "Your clerk is in our photograph," he said. "Edge of frame, hand, book, badge. If she thinks being useful to a newspaper buys a life, she learned the wrong lesson." Counsel did not blink. "If you think a judge's club stationery buys an acquittal, you learned the wrong city," he said, surprising himself a little with the spine in the sentence. "Good morning, sir." The tall man left with a smile he would use later on someone who could not read it. The partner followed, clutching his notes like a man who had built a raft out of receipts. In the wire room, the day shift had found its rhythm. Brass sounders beat their little rain. Fitch stood near the radiator, pretending to need a reason to stand near the radiator. Nell went back to her station. The foreman did not thank her and did not scold her, which was gratitude in a man who had to survive here tomorrow. On her blotter lay a small envelope with no address. Inside, a single contact print the size of a matchbox. Hallway, door chain, a sliver of her blouse, the hint of a lanyard. On the back, in pencil, a single word: careful. She flipped it over and looked until the grain resolved into dust, until the dust resolved into scratches that matched a camera plate that had been pulled too fast from a holder. She knew the feeling of a picture that wanted to live and a man who wanted it dead. Somewhere a plate had cracked under a boot heel or a hand. Somewhere a second print still existed. She slid the contact back into the envelope and the envelope into the book. At 9:03, a boy from Park Place arrived with a brown-wrapped parcel for Company Office Legal. He had the look of a printer's boy, ink in the fingerprints, type dust in the hair. Counsel opened the parcel with a letter opener that had cut more string than law. Inside lay a stack of sample letterheads with the same type as the bureaus, the same spacing, and a faint ghost of pinholes near the lower right margin. The note on top said, in a careful hand, "We print for many clubs. Your order history enclosed. Please return samples." The foreman looked at the samples like a man recognizing a family resemblance he wished was not there. Counsel smiled in a way that was not kind and not cruel, just professional. By 10:10, the rumor had come back around wearing a new hat. The judge on the writ had recused himself from matters touching telegraphic practice. The Nassau Street runner sent flowers to the counsel's room that smelled like a bribe pretending to be respect. The stationer's runner did not appear. His silence meant either satisfaction or damage control. Nell worked, copy, stamp, dispatch. She burned what was safe to burn and kept nothing that would make anyone rich twice. At noon she stepped out for air and found the tall man leaning against the building's granite like a man leaning against a memory. He did not look at her until she was 3 steps past him. "You made friends," he said. "You made letterhead," she said. He tapped the wall with 2 fingers. "We're both clerks," he said. "You just think your stack is different." "I think if your stack falls over, it crushes people who don't get to hire counsel," she said. "Pick it up before someone else names it." He smiled without humor. You think you named it first. I think I named it loud enough you have to change the title page, she said. He straightened his coat. We'll need you again, he said. She walked. Then send a writ without pinholes, she said. He did not laugh. Men like him don't laugh at jokes they did not buy. At 3:40 the afternoon heat pooled in the wire room, and all the fans could do was shove it to new corners. Nell signed a delivery for a boarding house note from Yonkers, her sister's hand, thin and worried, asking whether the $5 would still come this Friday because the landlady had spoken softly about other options. Nell folded the note into the address book, next to the little envelope with the contact print. She counted what she had and what she could afford to risk. She could not afford to be a symbol. Symbols get framed and hung or burned, depending on the weather. Clerks last longer when they look like furniture. At 4:55, just before changeover, a cleaner laid a dust cloth on the foreman's desk, and in doing so revealed a corner of another envelope tucked under his ledger. Brown paper, a red pencil X. It was not hers. It had been placed there by a hand that understood how habit makes boxes. The foreman pulled it free. There was no address. He looked at Nell once and then away, as if eye contact could be subpoenaed. He slid his thumb under the flap and stopped because a shadow filled the doorway, and a hand, gloved and polite, reached in and took the envelope before anyone could say a name or a word or the hour. The gloved hand disappeared with the envelope, and the doorway swallowed the arm like a stage trap. The foreman stood up too late and pretended he had meant to sit. Counsel said nothing because names make chains. Fitch took one step, then remembered he was a boy and not a witness. Nell did the only thing a clerk can do when the room tries to become a story without her. She reached for the burn box, closed its wire lid, and slid it under her chair. She picked up her blotter, turned it once, and found it mercifully blank. She opened the address book just enough to check the little contact print was still there, and closed it again before the room could learn a new word. Down the hall, the elevator cage clanged and carried the gloved hand to a floor where doors have carpets with initials. In the wire room, the brass sounders started up like rain after a dry spell. The foreman lowered his eyes to his ledger and stayed there, a man deciding to outlive a moment by pretending it never learned his name. Nell signed the changeover sheet with 4 letters that were almost hers. She put the address book under her blouse, where bone keeps paper safest. She walked out past the threshold where the bureau men had leaned all morning and did not look left or right. On Broad Street the heat pressed down and the city pretended to yawn. She turned her face toward Park Place and counted her steps. Somewhere ahead, a stationer sold respectable paper by the ream. Somewhere behind, a photograph cooled in a pocket. If anyone asked later what she did at 5 o'clock, the answer would fit on a receipt. She did not plan to leave one.